So much for making sweaters for Christmas this year, because the way I was humbled during this knitting class has me reconsidering everything. I signed up for another free class at my local library, and I walked in there with a lot of confidence. I didn't think it would come easy, but also like, how hard could it be? It's 2 needles and some yarn, like not that intimidating, right? We took a look at the type of knit we'd be learning, and then we cheers to a successful class. Maybe we cheers too soon because the struggle was real, but let's get into it. The teacher presented a few slides with some basics, and then we learned how to read packaging to ensure that we were using the right needles with the correct yarn. So the first step is the slip knot. You wrap the yarn around your pointer finger twice. Then you take the loop that's closest to you and put it over the other loop. Now you take that other loop and pull it all the way over your finger, and now you got a slip knot. See, boom, I did it. Now we're about to cast on to make our first row of stitches, and I'm still feeling pretty good about myself. All I had to do was wrap the yarn around my thumb and then bring the needle back through that loop, and boom, I've created a stitch. My husband and I were really proud of our progress at this point. But here's when the struggle bus comes and picks us up. So now it's time to actually knit, and I'm all kinds of confused. The teacher's trying to help me position the yarn on my finger so that I can have proper control when I'm knitting, and y'all, it's not even on the right hand. So I make the correction, I get the needle under the first stitch, but then I'm all kinds of confused on what to do next, like the yarn is going every which way. Then I realize my initial stitches are too tight, so I loosen those up. I figure out how to wrap the yarn around the needle, and now I'm actually knitting. But as I'm making progress, something just isn't quite right. That piece of yarn between both needles is just way too long, and ultimately I'm like, I'm starting over. Forget it, we're starting from scratch. And just that quick, I forgot how to do a slip knot, so I had my husband assist me. But when it was time to cast on, I was in there like swimwear. Boom, we all set. I'm counting my stitches. I'm ready to go. So now I should be a professional, right? I'm moving and grooving, knitting my pieces of yarn, and I'm halfway through, and I realize that same thing is happening again. The piece of yarn in between the 2 needles is still long and it's ugly, and I'm like, let's do it again. So I start over for the 3rd time, but this time I will not be defeated. The teacher suggested I keep the needles close together to prevent that spacing, and look at that, I got my first completed row. And then she's like, okay, switch hands and do it again. Girl, what? The first row had me stressed, and now you're saying I need to keep going? But she got me started, and I completed my 2nd row like a pro. Look at that. Now I was feeling myself, but I realized I had too much dip on my chip. I wanted to do a 3rd row, but I hesitated and I waited. But then I was like, girl, you got this. Only to quickly realize I don't got this. Somehow I undid the stitch, and it was like this hanging loop, and so I sat there and waited like I should have from the beginning. So the instructor finally came over. She was like, girl, let me just teach you how to bind off. This is the final step in the knitting process, and very, very important, because you want to ensure that everything you just did doesn't unravel in your face. It was tricky at first, but I figured it out, and y'all, I had a little thing. Now the final step is tucking those hanging threads behind the fabric so that they're not just dangling all over the place. Now I don't know what to call it, but it's mine and I'm sticking beside it. I made it and I'm proud. Now my husband didn't quite make as much progress as I did, but that's okay. I learned enough for the both of us. At least we could say we did some kind of knitting, right?